Julian, just so you know, we're live right now streaming. Julian, just so you know, we're live right now streaming.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
I can.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone, it's Patty. I think we're all here. We're already live streaming. So Tom, whenever you want to start, please feel free to do so.
And as it pertains to those meetings. Can no one hear me?
I can hear you now.
Okay. Does anybody have a motion to amend or to approve the meeting, the minutes of the April 14th meeting?
I'll make a motion to approve them.
I have one amendment.
Yep.
Under Article 2, Section 2, it says, therefore it was unnecessary to add this language because it was covered by state and federal statute. I'm not sure if that is why we decided not to cover it. It seems a little bit subjective to me. So I would motion that that be striked from the minutes.
I will second that.
All in favor of the motion? I'm just going to call right down the list in alphabetical order. Bill,
Yes.
Samantha.
Yes.
Well, actually, no, I guess that's Ludi. Sorry, Ludi.
Yes.
Samantha.
Yes.
Okay, I'm looking. Patty's not. That's not you, Patty. You're not there. Hillary.
Yes.
Rian.
Yes.
I inverted the two of you. I'm sorry. James.
Yes.
Ron.
Yes.
I am also a yes. Julian.
Yes.
Kathy.
Yes.
Good. Okay. Aside from that amendment, do we have a motion to approve the minutes as amended?
So moved.
Second.
All right, we're going to go all in favor again. Let's see if I can do this right. Phil.
Yes.
Ludi.
Yes.
Samantha.
Yes.
Rian.
Yes.
Hillary.
Yes.
James.
Yes.
Ron.
Yes.
I am a yes. Julian.
Yes.
And Kathy.
Yes.
Okay. Good. Moving on. Approval of any charter amendments that we first voted on 4/14/20. And okay, here we go. Thank you, Rian, for pulling those up there. So specifically an amendment to RN-107, Article 3, Section 1 shall be amended as follows. The city manager shall be chosen as provided in Article 4, Section 97 for a term not to exceed 5 years on the basis of character, executive, administrative qualifications, experience, and technical knowledge of municipal management. The city manager shall, during tenure of office, reside within the city. Is there a motion to approve this amendment?
So I want to point out that it's a little hard to see, but what it does is it just adds the I in Article 4, and then it strikes out Section 9 and replaces it with Section 7.
Yes.
That's a little hard to tell.
Yeah. Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. I see. Yeah. Okay. But I think that's, yep. With that in mind, is there a motion to approve this?
I'll motion to approve.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Let's go down the list here. Phil,
Yes.
Ludi,
Yes.
Samantha,
Yes.
Rian,
Yes.
Hillary.
We're voting. I have a question about this. I'm sorry.
Yep, that's
Is-
okay.
Rianne, would you be able to put it back up on the screen?
I can, yeah.
Thank you. So what we're talking about is just the Article 4 and the Section 97, right?
Yes.
Yes, yes. So yes.
Let's see here. James,
Yes.
Ron, Ron, I can't hear Ron. I don't know if anybody else can.
He might need to unmute.
Okay. We'll circle back to Ron. I am also a yes. Julian,
Yes.
Kathy.
Well, I also have a question like Hillary had.
Yep.
Isn't number one, isn't that Article 3, Section 1?
It is Article 3, Section 1, yes.
Okay, because someone said something else. I'm not sure who did at that point. And my other question was, this was what we were talking about at our last meeting, where Subcommittee C was going to.
No, Kathy, this is the error. This is just the drafting error from the last charter that references the incorrect section. Article 5, Section 9, the way it's currently written, just doesn't make any sense. And the correct section should be Article 4, Section 7. And that's all this is doing. This isn't going to prohibit us from going back and re-amending this. We've re-amended sections at least twice now already. So this amendment is just to change the reference to Article 4, Section 7.
But Rian, I guess I'm whatever, because Article 4 is the City Council.
Yes, and so Article 4, Section 7, it's actually 7D, in which the council considers the recommendations from the search committee and approve by a majority vote of the city councilors present appointment of a city manager and a city solicitor and the contract specifying the terms of employment. That's all it does, is just point it to the section.
Oh, all right. Okay, because what, you said there was a typo before? Is that what you said?
Yes, yeah.
All right, that's fine. Yes, sorry.
Ron,
Yes.
good. All right, so that gets us through the first two. Now we're on to number 3. And I know that our agenda speaks of moving on to Article 4 about the city council, but I'm wondering if, because it's my understanding that there was still some discussion to be had about the city manager. Any motions that may pertain, I think specifically to his or her qualifications going forward. Are there any motions on that front?
I have a motion, Tom.
Please.
So I would motion to put in language that the city manager shall be chosen as provided by Article 4, Section 7 for a term not to exceed 5 years. The council shall be the sole determination of qualifications. The city manager shall be appointed on a basis of executive and administrative qualifications with a minimum of 5 years experience and or relevant educational background. So that just strikes out the moral clause there and adds 5 years of relative experience.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, let's go with discussion. We're going to start top down this round of discussions. Next time we'll go in reverse alphabetical order. Phil, what do you have for thoughts on this?
I don't have many objection. My thing is I still believe that we should cap out the number of years. I mean, we have so many years to review our city charter. We have term limits for presidents, for governors, for many offices. I think that 5 years, is good. I think a 2-term limit that will give them a 10-year each would be good, so we can get some different perspective as far as being able to handle city business. So the only thing that I could possibly see that could be added there would be to add a 2-term limit for city manager.
Okay, and before I move on to you, Samantha, I just wanted to ask first, as it currently situated, it's a 5-year term, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Yes.
5-year term.
Okay. But the same person could be reappointed beyond that 5 years for as many terms as the council believes he or she is fit. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay. Samantha, your thoughts?
I think you skipped Ludi.
Oh, that's right. Sorry, Ludi, yes. I keep
No worries.
mixing my B's up, and I should know that R comes before you. My apologies.
No worries. So originally when we had this discussion, I thought that the charter was not really the place for us to put a job posting, and especially because nowhere else in the charter do we list super specific qualifications. But I really like Sam's language about how the council is the sole determinant of the qualifications and being appointed on the basis of executive or administrative qualifications with the minimum 5 years of experience or education. So I'm in support of Sam's motion.
Sam.
Yeah, so I chose this language because I thought that adding a minimum requirement for experience was important. I'm not in favor of putting in specific degrees just because I think that there are a lot of different degrees that could actually make you a good candidate for being the city manager. And it's really, I mean, we really have to look at experience, and I think we really need to leave it to the hiring committee to develop a strong job description based off of what they're looking for. Talking to a couple city councilors today, I found out that they've hired the Maine Municipal Association. Like, it is a very complex process, and I don't want to tie people's hands in the fact that they might not be able to hire the best candidate for the job. We could be limited in applications. We're not in a huge metropolitan area where we're going to be bombarded with candidates, I don't think. So just to keep that in mind.
Thank you. Rian.
Yeah, I think Ludi and Sam pretty much covered everything I was going to say. I'm good.
Hillary.
So we actually, as a subcommittee, were asked to look at the city manager as it appears in other charters. Tom, you didn't ask for a report, so I'm not sure if this is really the place to report on it. If you want me to, I can, but I think that—
I don't think it's appropriate, Hillary. I don't think this is an appropriate time to share what you've learned as part of the discussion.
Okay, so we were hoping for great insight from other cities, and I think what we found is that most people look like they copied and pasted. The language is pretty similar. So part of our discussion from 2 weeks ago that I think Kathy had brought up was, looking at this description, it looks really rather vague. And at the time, I absolutely agreed with her, and I think some other people on the commission did too. And that seemed surprising because this isn't an elected position. So it's not just a matter of whether you've lived in the city for a certain number of months or years. This requires obviously some skills. What wasn't clear from the charter is what skills might be preferable. So I think when we and Samantha actually put a great table together. And Samantha, I don't know if you have the ability to screen share that, if you want us to screen share it. I can't hear you.
I will pull it up. I have to open it.
Cool. So I copied and pasted the language, and she made it into a much more readable document. And you might just be interested to see how similar the language is in a lot of different towns and how vague it is. So the question is really why? And I don't know that we have an answer to that. I don't have an answer to that. So I think our discussion last week and the discussion that I had, we didn't have a full subcommittee meeting, but we had 3 members present, was, are there qualifications that might be reasonable? And how could that be worded in a way that would give some guidance to, say, the city council, but it wouldn't necessarily lock them in? And I'll say, just for full disclosure, I had a different motion in mind. But I don't want to dismiss what Samantha's raised, because she raises some really, really good points. There you go.
Okay.
Yeah, that's really nice. And obviously it's only a couple at a time. But if you look at Auburn, the city council shall choose the city manager solely on the basis of executive and administrative qualifications. And then it talks about residency. And then you can look down to Augusta. It doesn't have anything real specific about qualifications like what we had the discussion about. Am I right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of scanning through it, right? And then after Augusta, was that Bangor? Yep. Solely on the basis of character and executive and administrative qualifications. So again, not exactly, but very, very close language. Okay, Bath, some more. It's again vague. Brunswick, indefinite term, right? Solely on the basis of character, executive, and administrative qualifications. Fairfield, that's about as vague as you can get. Sorry, Fairfield, it just is. And that's not bad. It's just, I'm wondering if you can look through the rest. So the question that came to mind is why? Is there a reason for the vagueness? And is it by intent? And then the other point that Samantha's motion leaves me thinking is, it says should be solely determined by the city council. And so I was thinking about, so I used to teach foreign languages. I taught German and I taught Spanish. And there's this misconception that you could just hire somebody who speaks Spanish and that they could be a Spanish teacher. Not the case at all. Similarly, we assume city manager, you can make an assumption that doesn't necessarily mean that those are the qualifications that are needed. So I can't help but wonder if, and again, I have a motion in mind that I like, but I can't help but wonder if it would be worthwhile to have subcommittee B actually talk to our city manager. And Samantha, it sounds like you talked to a couple city councilors, but have subcommittee B talk to all of the city councilors, possibly have that discussion of any idea why the language is so vague, because it is similarly vague in other areas. If there isn't a good reason, then what qualifications would they really want? But I'm in agreement. It shouldn't be a job description. The job description for our current city manager is 2 pages long. Neither what we have in the charter, nor what Samantha has suggested, nor what I have in mind would be equivalent to a job description. But I would like to give the city council some guidance and again, not lock them in.
Thank you, Hillary. James.
So, yeah, I mean, I guess I would, I agree with Hillary that, perhaps it may be good to ask our city manager, ask some more council members, basically get some information on the process of how the city hires a city manager. Obviously, it's not something that happens every year. It happens, every so often. But I think that the fact that all of, most of the other towns that we looked into have more or less the same language that we do, that could be a totally antiquated way to phrase the qualifications, or there could be a reason why basically all the other towns have that same general language. And I think I'm in a position where I'd like to kind of know why. I don't think that, I think Samantha's motion definitely has the right intentions, but I just want to make sure that before I vote to make some relatively significant change to the charter, I'm sort of had a chance to sort of digest all of the potential consequences of that. So that's all I have to say.
Ron? Ron, I think you're on mute, bud.
Yes. Tom, I'm kind of overwhelmed. All this information comes to me. It happens week after week that we have these meetings, and then when I get here, I find out which one of these we've decided to pick apart and have some changes to it. I would be more comfortable if we just table this and take it up at our next meeting, because to tell you the truth, I really don't know how I'd want to vote on this at this time.
Ron, I think that point is well taken. I've actually, this is one of the, for me, this is one of the more complicated situations that we're looking at, because I don't want anybody who is capable of doing this job to be precluded from doing it because he or she doesn't have an MBA or doesn't have a degree in public policy or doesn't have an economics degree, or frankly, didn't work for 5 years in some other town. At the same time, I really like the idea of being able to give the city council some guidance and be able to say, look, this is the type of person that we're looking for, with this type of skill set, and absent those skills, you know, we better have a really good reason for picking who we're picking, but that does provide that type of flexibility. Those are just my thoughts. Julian.
Yeah, the city manager is one of the most important roles, obviously, in the city. So I think we do need to really, at the end of this, table it and decide on some real language that'll serve us well. My concern with term limits, I think, clarification, Samantha mentioned term limits 2 consecutive
I did
times.
not mention term limits. Phil did.
I did.
Term limits weren't in
Oh,
mine.
okay, sorry. The problem, I mean, I've seen obviously examples of where city managers have overstayed their usefulness and they're coasting. But I think the problem with the limits is a potential city manager might come across the nation with spouse and children. And that's a big move to make, to think that you might only have the 2 terms. And you know, you're going to relocate and put your heart into the city. And if you're doing a good job at the end, it's, you know, paranoia. The other issue with it too, if you're termed out, you can kind of have a city manager by the 2nd term that really doesn't care, because he can't, or he or she can't really be voted out at that point because it's their last term. So I think that can pose some problems. I definitely think we really need to revisit this. I'm a little concerned about minimum experience, because if no one applies or 2 candidates apply and they have under the 5 years, then technically that would preclude us from hiring them. So yeah, there's a lot of issues here, I think. I mean, even the way Mike Roy was appointed was very different to how city managers are appointed now. I believe it was LePage had more power then, and carte blanche could appoint him without going through the council. But the other concern is when you say sole determination of the council, does that preclude search committees and mayors getting involved? You know, we really need a big set of eyes to help out with that. So I'd hate.
Can I just speak to that?
Yeah.
So when I say sole determination of council, I mean the council approves the job description.
Okay, so I'd like to see that like
Approved
sole,
by someone.
maybe sole, the council alone votes, has the sole power to vote. But as far as determination, I think search committees and many other people could add into that. And last clarification, I know I got a few laughs last time, or they thought I was a little 2-headed monster, but it apparently does turn out that the city manager does have to be a US citizen. Is that correct? Okay. And also, maybe we need some language. We were talking about past criminal records. What would preclude a city manager applying? Maybe if it was financial embezzlement, you know, and spent time in jail, that might not be someone that we would want to rehire to run the city's finances. Thank you.
Kathy.
Yes, Tom. I agree with what Hillary was saying, that it is, I feel it is necessary to specify those degrees as we looked at in Subcommittee C. Somebody with an interior design degree should not qualify to even apply for the city manager. How it's working right now, there is an executive search committee out for the position that will be open. They will screen those candidates. To me, it just makes sense to have an education background in the fields of business and finance. Belfast has been looking for a city manager, and they had over 40 applicants just for Belfast. So hopefully we will have some very qualified candidates. You know, I personally would even like to see it more than those 7 people sitting at the council table voting on who is going to be the next city manager, but I know that's another kettle of fish. So I guess I am with Hillary and Julian that let's postpone this until next time, but I do disagree with term limits. You're not going to move your family here, become established in the community and know you only have 10 years to stay here and move on. So.
All right, Kathy, thank you very much for that input. It sounds as though, there's a lot of people, I think, that feel very similarly about how to achieve the same goal here. I just don't necessarily know that we're in position to do it tonight. Is there a motion? Because what I would hate to do is I'd hate to take a vote on Sam's motion and it not pass, not because people aren't necessarily supportive of our language, but because people would like to fine tune it maybe, or something along those lines, which is I think what I'm getting from this crew. Is there a motion to table this and with the intent of us doing a little bit more homework and voting on it next meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Yeah, and Tom, if I can just chime in, I think
Please.
I said subcommittee B, but I think it's subcommittee A that would be
Yes, I
passed.
saw that note. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So here's this. If we've got a second, then let's just call the roll and go right down it. Phil.
Well, I'd like to discuss the current motion.
The motion to table?
Yeah.
Okay, go right ahead.
We tabled this at the end of last meeting. We sent it back to Subcommittee C so that they could fine tune the language. Sounds like Subcommittee C disagrees and they have 2 different kind of opinions on how things should go. But I don't see us getting in anywhere in 2 weeks except exactly where we are right now, voting on 2 different views of how this section should go. So I think it's fine to vote on Sam's motion, which is current. I think it's fine to vote on Sam's motion as it is right now. And there's nothing precluding anybody from coming back in 2 weeks and saying, I'd like to add something to the motion that we approved. Like I said, we've re-amended sections. We re-amended the section on qualifications for city council. We've amended that twice. There's nothing that's going to prohibit us from going back and doing this, but we've had 2 weeks on this. Let's vote on the motion on the floor right now. And if we want to add to it, we can, but let's just not waste 2 more weeks on this.
I would agree with that. And I think that it's important to know that this isn't set in stone. So we are in a great position right now where the council is working through a hiring process. And this is a great time for us to open communication between the council and say, this is the language we have right now. How might we need to alter that, and make sure that at the end of this, we come out with something really great. So that's just my opinion on that.
Tom?
Yes.
there's been so many suggestions and points raised though by all parties here that I think we're woefully unprepared for this. And just because, you know, something was presented, obviously we really haven't done the facts and hammered out something, all the language we can agree on. I'd rather see nothing in there like other towns have than tie us to things if we're not sure. Ultimately, the council
And
decides.
here's the thing is that I'm not even going to weigh in on whether I agree or disagree with you. What I will say is that that's one of the things about the reality of the voting process is that if you disagree with Sam's language for whatever reason, you don't have to vote yes. No one does. But it sounds like there's a motion and a second to vote on Sam's motion. Hillary.
So a quick reminder, Tom, people are raising hands on the right side of your screen. So that's why I was doing it physically. So I just wanted to clarify, Rhian, we were not tasked with cleaning up the language for this. We were tasked with looking at other towns. What I offered to do in the last meeting was I offered to work with Kathy and so we did have a subcommittee meeting, but we were not all present. So I cannot tell you that we worked as a subcommittee to draft language because we weren't tasked with doing that. Because at the last meeting, I said I would work with Kathy to come up with some language. And because I thought that James also sounded like he agreed that the language should be cleaned up, then when we had a Zoom conference, we worked on language. But really, truly, I don't want to suggest that our subcommittee had the task of changing this, so we didn't. But procedurally, Samantha raised a motion. If we by procedure have to vote on it, then we should vote on it. Somebody motioned it to table. It was seconded. I don't know if that supersedes. We just need to follow whatever rules we have, and that's up to you to decide.
Well, so I think that in terms of in time, because there was a second to vote on Sam's motion, then we got to vote on Sam's motion.
No, there was a second to table it, and then the motion was proposed, I believe.
No, Sam proposed the motion. I seconded it. Then there was a motion to table.
Okay.
So I think we just go right down. Phil.
What are we voting on? Because the two motions were all second.
We're voting on Sam's motion to amend the charter as it pertains to the city manager's position, the language for his or her qualifications.
No.
And Ludi.
Yes.
And Rhian.
You skipped Sam.
Oh, I'm sorry, Sam. For some reason, because I thought it was your motion, I just took for granted how you were going to vote on it.
Yeah, I'll vote yes on the motion.
I also vote yes.
Okay. Hillary.
No.
James.
No.
I vote yes. No, excuse me, it's not me yet. Ron.
No.
I'm a yes. Julian.
No.
And Kathy.
No.
Okay, the motion does not pass. So.
Tom,
with that-
this is
with that
Patty.
said-
Tom, can I interrupt for 1 second? Could I get a recap of what Sam's motion was? Because I didn't catch it. I was having some problems with audio. So just for the record, just so that I know what the motion was.
Sam, would you
Patty,
mind?
I'll email it to you.
Okay, thank you.
You're
But
welcome.
the motion did not pass, I believe, Patty, 6-4.
Yeah, right. I got it.
Excuse me, 4-6.
Correct.
4 in favor, 6 against.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So with that said, from what I'm seeing from the agenda here, I believe we're moving on to Article 4 as it pertains to the City Council. Does anybody have any motions as they pertain to
Wait,
Article 4?
I still have one under Article 3.
Yep. Okay. I mean, that wasn't on the agenda, but
Yeah, I still have one on Article 3. If we could go back, we could not go back. I can hold the motion. That's fine.
no. I was just going through our agenda tonight. I thought that the only thing we had to clean up was that particular motion that we left over last time.
I didn't think that we talked about any of the city manager last time. But my motion is under, so Article 3, Section 3, under powers and duties of the city manager. I would like to add to that the city manager may not be the permanent head of any department.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All right, discussion. We're going to start in reverse order here. Kathy, you go ahead.
Rian, I just need to ask Rian, what letter was that?
So there's no letter. So it's going to be under Article 3, Section 3. And I believe I would be adding a letter J that would say that the city manager may not be the permanent head of a department.
Tom, does it make sense when someone makes a motion to explain it like that so that we can all follow why?
I mean, that's fine. I try not to micromanage these things. I want to let, whomever's making their motion, I want to let them make it and speak to it however they want to. And then.
Yeah, I can clarify a little more. And that's just because there are other sections in the charter that say that 2 or more departments can be headed by the same individual. And then one of those can include finance. And since the city manager is supposed to be, the supervisor of all the directors, I don't think it's appropriate that the city manager then also head a department, and one of which can include finance. If you look in the finance, if you look in Article 7, there are things that have to be signed by the director of finance and countersigned by the city manager. And I think this is part of just a relic that was in there from before they expanded the city manager position. But the city manager has a lot of duties in, their own right. And I don't really think it's good for the city to then turn around and say that the city manager can head other departments, one of which can be finance.
Okay.
So Rian, you were saying, Rian,
Yes.
you were saying the word permanent, correct?
Yes, just because if there's a vacancy and there needs to be an acting director or somebody who's in charge of the department, I'd like to leave that room open to be the city manager, just in case there's nobody else who is able to do it. So that's why I left it as permanent.
All right, Kathy, anything you'd like to say on this motion?
No, it makes perfect sense to me, Tom.
Okay, Julian.
Yeah, I actually agree with Rian on this. One of the issues I can see that is if you're the permanent manager of a department, not even related to finance, let's say you're acting as the fire chief as well, there's a potential to be funding that department better off and giving special perks for it because you're managing that department. You don't want to have issues of short staff when you're the manager. So there might be more funding going towards that. And I don't think the city manager would fully understand all the liabilities and legal processes and protections that a seasoned fire chief would. So I am in agreement with this.
Yeah, I am too. Ron. Ron, I think you're muted again.
To save time, I'll be brief. I have no comments.
James.
I'm in favor of it. No other comments.
Hillary.
I'm in favor.
Rian.
Yep.
I mean, I would imagine so. Samantha.
Yep, sounds good to me.
Moody.
Same here, yes.
Okay, and Phil.
Yes.
All right, then let's take a vote on it. Kathy.
Yes.
Julian.
Yes.
I'm a yes. Ron.
Yes.
James.
Yes.
Hillary.
Yes.
Rian.
Yep.
Samantha.
Yes.
Moody.
Yes.
Phil.
Yes.
Good. The motion passes 10.
There's a first, we need champagne. Before we move on, just a real quick question. We do need to make sure that, being as we voted down earlier, the final language for the city manager, that we do find a way of addressing this at some point, or getting everyone's ideas and thoughts together, and as timely and quickly as possible, because that language and one job description has the potential to go on for 2 weeks if we belabor it, I think. So I'll leave that with the chairs. Thank you.
With that said,
Tom,
yes, go ahead, Phil.
I actually have an amendment on the city manager,
Yes, go ahead.
section A. So being on the city council, one thing I found out is that sometimes communication between city employees and department heads is not really facilitated with the city council, right? Because sometimes the city council does not have the latitude to be able to, official latitude, because I believe there's some language somewhere in the charter, we haven't got there yet, that kind of prohibits, the city council to have direct discussions with city employees and department heads without, the express consent of the city manager, I believe. So I would like some language to be added into the subsection, into section 3, paragraph A, at the end, that stipulates that the city council shall reserve the right to interact with any city employees or department head as needed.
All right, do we have a second?
We can't hear you, Julian, you're on mute. You're on mute, dude.
If we don't
Sorry?
have a second, if we don't have a second, then we move on.
I'm going to second it just to give debate to it.
All right, we're going to start from the top. Phil, discussion.
Well, like I said, it's just to open up more communication. There's been, speaking from the place where I was on the council, I know firsthand that there was sometimes where information was kind of not shared the way that it should, and communication was kind of held back because we kind of had to sort of have a permission, I don't know if that's the exact word, to be able to speak with a department head before to gain understanding on a particular subject, because that particular decision that we're making were involving that department, right? And I believe there was some language that was sent to us that specifically points to the charter and stating that before a city councilor cannot speak directly, cannot interact directly with a department head without the city manager pretty much approval, which I thought that was pretty ridiculous. Because as a city councilor, you should be able to speak with any department head at any time to be able to gain understanding on a particular subject that you're trying to vote on. And I thought that is something I had it marked down, but it looks like I kind of I forgot to bring it up. But I think that is something that should be absolutely marked in the city charter if we want to keep transparency in between the way that city council, department heads, and city employees behave, interact, because I think it should be pretty clear that any department head, any city employee should be able to go to the city council, right, and speak freely without fear of, without fear that they will be reprimanded or that it is not permissible for them to do so. And all communication can only go directly through the city manager and to the council.
So, Ludi, before I get to you, Phil, my question, I guess, would be, and anybody that wants to chime in, does the absence of the language proposed by Phil, based on anyone else's knowledge on this committee, does the absence of Phil's language, would that prevent other people from speaking at city council meetings? I don't know whether it would or whether it wouldn't.
Phil is correct that there is language in the charter that says that communications between the council and city employees go via the city manager. I don't know where it is. I'm looking for it right now and I can't find the exact section that it is in, but Phil is correct that there is language stating that.
Okay, thank you for that, Ryan. Ludi, your thoughts?
I'm still open to hearing more discussion on it, so I don't have an exact answer on how I'm gonna vote yet.
Samantha?
No comment.
Ryan?
Yeah, no comment.
Hillary?
So I'm confused, Phil, because it sounds like if that language is part of the charter, then we need to identify what part of the charter that language is. And it sounds like that language then needs to come under city council and not under the city manager.
Yeah, I'm looking for it myself. I'm trying to get a quick search here to see if I can pinpoint.
I'm looking to.
I guess my point would be, it doesn't appear to be an issue of the city manager right now. So if it's not, then we address it when we get to the city council part.
What now?
Well, where are my papers now? They had to be the city manager.
Hello? Oh,
Well, I'm just wondering, do we want to wait until we find out what we're finding out here, or do we want to just, James, do you want to speak on the issue?
I don't have anything to say.
Ron?
No comment.
Yeah, me either. Julian?
yeah, I'm quite opposed to it. Having been on the school board and doing some research first,
No.
pretty much I learned that any issues I have with anyone or principals, I go to Eric about and ask him. And if we don't like the job if we don't like the job that the principals are doing, we can ask Eric to deal with it. Or if we're still not happy, then Eric can be voted off as the superintendent, just using him as an example. But when you get people going in and micromanaging, the fire chief says, well, the counselor came down, told me to do this, and then the city manager, it can create a whole can of worms. And I can see why there is a chain of command. You don't micromanage the people underneath you. If you don't like the performance of the fire department, then you get rid of the city manager or expect things. There's nothing to stop anyone touring it and gathering information per se, but we have to be very careful of kind of sucker punching the administration with lots of different people. So I think there's reason in the school board, very specific language about not doing that. And I can see why it pertains to the city departments as well. Thank you.
Okay, and Kathy?
Well, number one, I agree with Hillary. I'm trying to look to see where this is, and like her, I cannot find that. But I also agree with Julian. There is a chain of command there. So I'm not seeing where this would be necessary.
I'm thinking this might be an ordinance and not codified into the charter, because I just did a word search in my electronic charter and I can't find it. So I'm now on board with holding this until we can figure out what exactly we're trying to change.
So where are we now?
Do we vote whether to adopt Phil's proposal or not?
Technically, it was made and seconded, so
Anyway, sorry
Phil's
about that.
withdrawing it.
Can everybody hear me? 'Cause I cut out there.
You cut out, but we can hear you now.
Okay, good. I'm sorry about that, guys. So I think that the do is we should just kind of follow what we've been doing here today with
You keep
Sam's
cutting
motion, and that
in
is
and
this.
out.
Let's just vote on this motion. If someone, can you hear me?
Not
you're cutting
very
in and
well. Yeah, you're cutting in and out.
What about now?
Better, yes.
Yes.
Okay, all right, well, then that'll serve me right for trying to move my computer. My thought is this, is that just as we voted on this motion earlier, even though there was not really a consent about how to handle it, we vote on Phil's motion. If someone wants to bring another or related motion at a future meeting or even later in this meeting, then we can. It sounds like it's something that we would do later on. To that end, Phil, how do you?
I vote yes.
Okay, and
I did not hear. Did you just call on me?
yes,
Okay, I vote no.
Sam,
No.
I vote no.
Tom, I don't hear you, but I think I might be next, so I'm voting no.
James votes no as well.
Ron, I'll take the vote over.
No for Ron.
Tom? We cannot hear you. Julian?
No,
Kathy?
No.
Tom, do you want to unmute and try again?
Or did we totally lose him?
Tom, are you there?
yes.
And your vote on this is yes or no?
Yeah, I am voting no.
Okay, so the vote was 1 in favor and 9 opposed.
Okay. Okay. All right. So what do we have? Do we have any other motions as they pertain to the city manager, or can we move on to the city council?
I have one more quick motion, Tom.
Yep.
And I think this would go in section 1. So I would make a motion that we put language in the charter that the city manager must be bonded. Patty, I'm guessing that Mike is bonded already. Yes?
I'm assuming so. I would have to check, but most of the financial people have to be bonded. So I would assume that Mike would fall into that category because he has authority to sign bonds and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And Sam, if I may inquire, can you talk me through the purpose of this motion?
Yes. So a bond, I'm not an insurance agent, but I do work for an insurance agency. So a bond is it's a surety bond, and it just provides a financial guarantee should an official, typically like anyone that's a CEO of an organization, or like Patty had said, someone that is in the finances is bonded, and it's just a guarantee against any losses should something go astray, should their duties not be faithfully executed. So the purpose of the bond is just to protect the city against any issues, financial issues that might come. I did see language in some other charters, and it did fall under that qualifications section. So I did draft some language about bonding, and it just says the city manager shall give bond to the city of Waterville for the faithful performance of his or her duties in such a sum as the council determines and directs, and with the surety or sureties to be approved by the council.
Okay. Julian.
yeah, it's a good point. I'm just wondering, could Sam's new proposal, would that not fall under the entire debate we're gonna have with the city manager that we're gonna organize regards qualifications, expectations, criminal record? It seems like that would fall under the job description and requirements that we're going to revisit.
So are we just not talking about this section anymore? Because, I mean,
Well, it seemed your new proposal was pertinent to what we had tabled or voted no on to come back to. And there was a lot of,
I think if I can interject here, having talked to Sam about this afternoon, this is in something that we should have in here that we don't have in here, regardless if we make any change to the qualifications or we leave it as it stands. This is something that the city should have in here. So it's something that we should have in, again, regardless of whatever other changes we make to that section, we should have this in here.
Tom?
Okay.
So-
Do we, yeah, go ahead, Julian.
I real quick, I agree with Rian. The only thing I'd like to look into is if it is already covered under the state statute or laws of accounting, then I wouldn't want to duplicate it. But if it is not, I think it is a good idea to add it to our charter.
Okay, good. Is there a second to this motion? I don't recall if there was.
Oh, I seconded it. I may have been
Okay.
on mute, but I seconded.
Okay, so in terms of discussion, I think so. Last time we went top to bottom. Let's go bottom to top. Kathy, your thoughts?
I really have no thoughts about that. I mean, it makes sense, but is that already built into the financial codes?
I'm kind of looking into that right now to see if there's something in state statute about municipal officials having to be bonded. So I'm doing a little research on the fly here.
Okay.
Julian, your thoughts?
Yeah, I'll vote yes for it. We can always remove it if it turns out to be covered under accounting or practices or state statute.
It brings me to me. Yeah, I feel the same way. If the language, provided the language is already covered in the statute, which would make it redundant, I agree. I mean, I think protecting the taxpayers, you know, from a city manager who violates his or her fiduciary duty is always something that's in the best interest of the city. And that moves us to Ron.
Yes, I would think that it would be implied anyways. Anybody with public finances has to be bonded. So I would say someplace it is. If not, it's implied. If not, I certainly believe it should be put in.
James.
I'd be in favor. No other discussion.
And Hillary.
I'm in favor of it.
Rian.
Got nothing to add.
Sam.
Yeah, I have nothing to add.
Ludi.
I'm in favor of nothing to add.
Bill.
Yes.
All right, let's vote on it. Kathy.
Yes.
Julian.
Yes.
Me, yes. Ron.
Yes.
James.
Yes.
Hillary.
Yes.
Rian.
Yep.
Sam.
Yes.
And Ludi.
Yes.
And Phil.
Yes.
Excellent. Okay.
I would just add, Tom, that I did a quick search in Title 30A, and I see that there's a requirement for bonding for a treasurer, but I don't see anything specifically associated with a town or city manager. So I can't say that for sure that it's not there, but I don't see it on a quick review.
Okay, well, that's helpful, Patty. Thank you for letting us know that. All right, this is good. Anyone have any other motions?
I just had a point of clarification.
Yep.
So, Julian, you raised other ideas with the city manager and said that we were going to continue the discussion. And I don't know that we formally did. So I just wanted to ask if we can have subcommittee A speak with current city councilors and with the city manager to see if there's a reason why qualifications wouldn't be outlined specifically, why generally, and it looks like most other town charters, it's pretty vague.
Ron?
Yeah, go ahead, Julian.
Yeah, it's a good idea. But hopefully to speed the actual meeting time up too, maybe the committee can phone the other members and we can put our suggestions and thoughts and they can hammer out some language that they think everyone will vote on rather than doing it at the meeting. You know,
I want to be clear. I'm not asking for the committee to hammer out language. I'm just asking for feedback on the point.
well, we had a lot of suggestions and thoughts when it went around the table tonight. And I'm thinking, you know, it might be good to shoot you an email with some of those while your draft or there's being a draft made up of what we're expecting from our city manager before the actual meeting time. Thank you.
So where does that leave us?
I believe Julian seconded.
Yes.
All right, so top down, Phil,
Yes.
Flutie,
So I'm on that subcommittee, and I'm open to it. So sure.
Sam,
Yeah.
Rhian,
No.
Hillary,
Yes.
James,
Yes.
Ron.
Yes.
Yes, for me. Julian
Yes.
and Kathy.
Yes.
All right. Good. So, any other motions on the city manager position before we move on to Article 4?
Yes, I would like to make a motion under section 5, limitation of political activity of the city manager. Even though the first sentence is saying the manager is forbidden to use official authority or influence, there is no sentence within this whole paragraph that states the repercussions of interfering with any political actions. I would like to make a motion that we add in a sentence as to what repercussions that would be.
And I think Kathy, what we would need is we need some in your motion. We need some specific language as to what those repercussions would be.
Okay,
Termination.
exactly.
Is there a second?
I second it.
All right, so we'll discuss. Last time we went bottom to top. Let's go top to bottom. Phil, your thoughts?
I don't think this would be the place to add things about political affiliation when it comes to the city manager, especially where it's already stipulated that the city manager will not be influencing any political decisions. Yeah, I just don't think that this is the place to do that.
Flutie.
Yeah, I think the language is just fine already of limiting political activity and not allowing political donations or using authority to interfere. And of course, the city manager can be their own private citizen. And I think the language is fine as is.
Sam.
I agree that the language is fine as is.
Rhian.
I believe that what Kathy's going after would be covered under section 6 because the city council has the authority to remove the manager after a hearing held for that notice. So if the city manager did something they were forbidden to do, they can hold a hearing and remove him.
Hillary.
Yeah, I was going to say something similar. It looks like that would be section 6 that you would want to include it, but I think it is clear that so it's the official sort of office that is forbidden. But as Ludi said, as a private citizen, whoever the city manager is allowed to be a private citizen. So it would be this question of if the city manager uses the authority within the position of city manager, then the repercussion would be that they could be removed. And I think it looks like the council can remove them. So I hear what you're saying. You want it more clear, but I think it's already included.
James.
No comments.
Ron.
Yes, I can live with it the way it so states.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think we spent a lot of time cleaning up language. I think we've spent a lot of times trying to remove redundancies and not approve things that certain people felt were redundant. And I feel the same way about this. Julian.
No, I think I agree with Kathy's motion because the city manager can influence behind the scenes appointment or encouraging people to run for council, getting them on that seat. And once they've abused that power to do that, you're then relying on the same council that he helped get on there for the penal system. So I think that it shouldn't be up to the very council that he could have helped get elected to determine the consequences of that action. So I agree with Kathy on that.
Kathy.
Well, obviously, I agree. I disagree with the comment that he's a private citizen. just like the President of the United States. When you're President of the United States, that's what you are. When you're the city manager of a city, you are no longer just a resident. And you have a higher standard that should be followed. So I think that it is necessary to have that sentence in there.
All right. Ken, thank you. Let's vote. Phil, you.
Well, I just want to make a comment about the president, because the president is not prohibited from being affiliated to a political party or vote for a political party. That's just, but I vote no.
Ludi,
No.
Sam,
No.
Rian,
No.
Hillary,
No.
James,
No.
Ron,
No.
me, no. Julian,
Yes.
Kathy.
Yes.
All right. So, in light of that, do we have any more motions on the city manager's position?
I have just one.
Julian, just so we're clear, every time somebody says we have just one, we get that much closer to doing this on Labor Day. Now, you go right ahead, but just keep that in mind, everybody.
Well, everyone's made a motion, so I have one motion.
I haven't. I
Okay.
haven't, but go ahead.
Okay, if you don't want me to make the motion, I can withdraw that.
No, I don't. I know everybody's concerned about time, and I just put that out there.
I would like to make a motion that the city manager could not take a job within 2 years after leaving, within a city department, within 2 years of leaving the office of city manager. The reason for that is other towns have precluded that, and they've also precluded that vice versa from councillors taking jobs within city departments, because they're negotiating contracts, pay raises, benefits, and setting financial rewards within those departments. So you could be giving a 5% pay raise to the fire department with good benefits. Then when you're no longer city manager, you're taking a position maybe as volunteer fire, or that's just an example. But I've seen lots of cities precluding that, both from council to, and I'll propose the same motion when it comes to councillors. So that's the motion on that. Thank you.
Well, Julian, I feel silly for giving you a hard time about this, because I'm going to second your motion. I'm going to second your motion.
Thank you, Tom.
Discussion on this goes from the bottom to the top. Kathy, your thoughts?
No thoughts. I agree.
Julian, back to you. Do you need, if you feel like you want to elaborate?
No, I do see potential for abuse, and I'm going to bring up the same motion when it comes to councillors, because a city manager could offer a councillor a job to remove them from the council if they were the one vote in the wheel, and the councillors vote on pay raises, contracts, they negotiate with the union. Auburn and I think Lewiston have forbidden it. You can't sit on the council within 2 years and take a job within a city department. So I think the same should apply for a city manager, especially if he's thinking, or he or she's thinking of layoffs in a certain department, but their contract's expiring. Maybe they won't make layoffs in that department because they'd like to apply. So I think that would protect the taxpayers. Thank you.
For the reasons that have been mentioned previously, I agree. Ron, your position?
Yes, I agree. I'd like the city manager to be someone that would be loyal to our city.
James?
Sorry about that. No comments.
Hillary?
I just wasn't clear about, you said 2 years. Is there a benefit to 2 years versus 1?
Well, 1 year's kind of very short term. You know, the cycle of negotiations might kick in. Language I've seen in other charters are 2 years. I'd like it to be 3, but that's really too long. I think 2 years gives enough time for the smoke to dispense. I don't want to have it too restrictive, but I think 1 year is really quite short when you've been making contracts and deals.
Mhm.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Rian?
I have concerns about what happens if a city manager retires. we hire a new city manager, that something unfortunate happens, we lose that city manager, and the old city manager would like to come out of retirement and take the position back, they would be precluded from doing so.
Sorry, I meant city departments. The city manager, I don't really see as a city department. So
It doesn't matter, he would still, or she, if Mike Roy decided to come back after retirement, he would be precluded from joining.
I could amend that. Personally, I don't care if they come back to manage a city. I care about them coming back to work in a department that they've had financial control over. So I see your point. I can amend the proposal to say city departments, with city managers not really working for a city department.
Would that, let me ask you this, folks, would that solve that problem? Or would we need to specifically say, except for position of city manager? Rena, I think you're kind of like our resident expert on this type of language. What are your thoughts?
I mean, if the intent of what we pass is that the city manager cannot come back to work for a city department for 2 years, that's fine.
Yeah. That's my
Okay.
intent, yeah. And I
Louis.
You skipped Sam.
Oh, yeah, geez, Sam, sorry.
I don't have anything to add.
Louis,
I have nothing to add.
Phil,
No comment.
Kathy, we're gonna vote with you first.
Yes.
Julian,
yes.
I'm a yes. Ron,
Ron,
Yes.
James,
No.
Hillary.
I'm sorry, was the language amended to say that the city manager could return?
Yes, in that, I believe it was, in the position of city manager, yes.
Yes.
Rian,
No,
Ludi,
Skip Sam again.
Sam,
No.
Ludi,
No.
Phil.
Yes.
All right, so it's a 6-4 vote, but the vote doesn't pass.
yes, it does. 7-3 is the threshold, isn't it?
Yeah, but I
right,
think-
and so it was
just
6-4.
Yeah, 7-3 is the threshold.
Yeah, 7-3 is the threshold, and we got to 6-4 on this, right?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah,
Yeah, there were 6 votes for and 4 against.
okay, close. Thank you.
And Julian, thank you for not biting my head off, for giving you a little bit
Oh,
of a hard
no.
time there.
I'm calm, but don't worry. I know we're time constrained.
Appreciate it. Does anybody have any motions on Article 4?
Yes.
Ron, go right ahead.
We're talking about Article 4, the city council, is that
Yes,
correct?
sir.
Okay, how about section 2? I want to change it from 3 months to 1 year.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, discussion starting with Phil.
We are on the city council. Give me I lost my pages here.
Phil, you're not the only one. I keep losing mine.
Page 9, if that helps, Phil.
No, I got electronic version. Yeah, I'm trying to. So we are. Where are we again?
Page 9, section 2, qualifications.
Yeah. So okay, the city council should be. So we want to change the 3 months to 1 year.
Correct.
Oof. I mean, I understand what the sentiment is here. I think that for the city council, I think 1 year it's long. I think it's a long time to be able to apply. I think we had this discussion before, whereas we wouldn't want to preclude somebody from being able to bring their experience or to the city council because they have only lived in the city for about 5 months or even 3 months. And I think that the 3 months is okay for as far as limit.
Ludi, I think I got this right this time.
Yeah, you're good. So like Phil, I get the sentiment. but the Warren boundaries are so small so that there is the question of like what would happen after redistricting, or if a super great counselor or engaged citizen switches wards and has to wait before running, they have to wait a whole year. And a majority of Waterville is made up of renters, so this change would basically preclude them from running, and it would mean that only homeowners could run for council. So I'm not really in favor of changing it to a year. I'm fine with 3 months.
Now, Ludi, I'm not arguing with you, but talk me through why a renter would not be able to run.
I had the same question.
They would move to a different ward, and they'd have to wait a year.
Okay, but I mean, that doesn't, okay, so the point what you're saying is someone who rents and moves regularly
Yeah.
would be precluded from voting, but not, I mean, there's nothing in here that says that you must be a property owner to vote.
No, of course not. It
Okay.
just,
Okay, Sam.
Yeah, I don't really have anything new to add. I think that living in your ward for 3 months seems sufficient. I live on like a ward boundary, so if the ward gets redistricted, I could very easily be put into Ward 3. And even though I've lived here for many years, I would be precluded from running for city council because I've been redistricted from Ward 6 to 3 simply because I live really close to the ward boundary. And not that I would know the neighborhood any differently because it's still my neighborhood. My neighborhood just happens to be split in half.
The fact
So
that Ward 6 and Ward 3 abut one another raises some concerns about how good our city's founders are at math and geometry.
well,
But aside
like,
from that,
I mean, Rian can speak to the ward boundaries even better than I can, but I know like the Ward 3 and Ward 6 boundaries are so close. For example, like I think Burley Street is split in half. And like for me, my street is split in half. Like half of my neighbors are in Ward 3 and half are in Ward 6. So the fact that it could very easily change, that's one of the reasons why I am not in favor of this.
okay, so now we are at Rian. Rian, you go. I am stepping away from my computer for just a minute, but go right ahead, I'll be right back.
And guess this means I can't persuade Tom with my salient and pertinent and eloquent arguments of no, everybody else has said what I want to say, so I'm good. Just jump right in, Hillary.
Yeah, Hillary, do you want to continue?
Sure. Tom's also not going to hear what I was going to say. Samantha raised the point that I was concerned about. So it's entirely possible that those boundaries can change, right? And Burley Street's a great example. My ward goes and splits partly on Burley. I mean, I've actually been concerned about if someone gets redistricted, that they could have been a lifelong Waterville resident and suddenly they're not able to run. I'd much prefer language that said something about a Waterville resident rather than ward resident. It's up to your ward whether they want to vote for you or not, right? So, if you've been a lifelong resident, you've lived on Burley Street, and 1 year to the next, somehow you've been switched to another ward, people still might vote for you because you've been there forever. So I think that presents a problem. The other thing, and Ludi, you brought that up, but I'm actually an example. I moved across town a year and a half ago, or it'll be 2 years ago, I guess, in August. And, I've been in Waterville for a really long time, but once I made that move, I also was precluded from running for anything. And so it's not just renters, but renters can happen more often. So the year just makes it even harder.
James.
I wouldn't be in favor.
Ron.
Yes, I believe that we was unanimous voting on the mayor. That was 3 months residence. We changed that to 1 year. And I think,
That vote was 7-3.
well, it is going to be going out to the public when we vote. Let me continue if you don't mind. And the mayor has to show leadership skills and be an ambassador to the city. Whereas the councilor, I think this is even more important that we have 1 year because they have unique problems in the different wards and different experiences in living there over time. And, when I hear that, that we don't have enough qualified people, there's a shortage of people. I think we have over 17,000 people in the city of Waterville, probably over 2,000 people in each ward. There must be somebody there that would be able to do it without worrying about somebody just moving in. Somebody just moving in, sometimes I would wonder what their motives are that want to be on the council so quick. Are they thinking about being a career politician? Or do they really care about the fellow man in their ward? Now, we're talking about different periods of time that we have lived in a ward. Well, I've lived in Ward 7 since 1975. And I'll tell you one thing, I am learning more and more every day about people that live in the South End as I walk on Water Street, Summer Street, Grove Street, especially now. My wife and I take a walk with this virus that we have, and I'm getting to know people more and more. And I'll tell you one thing about people that are natives of Maine and also natives of Waterville, they sometimes are not the type of people that instantly take to strangers that are just moving into the area. Therefore, for these reasons, that's why I would think that we should change it from 3 months to 1 year.
All right, that brings it to me. So here's the thing. My position, I think, aligns most similarly with Hillary's. I agree with a lot of folks here that a longer residence requirement, and again, I think just being consistent with what we did with the mayor, a year makes a lot of sense. But I don't think that it should be in the ward. I think it should be in the city, a resident of the city. And I would. So what I will say is, if that is the language, I will vote for it. Julian.
Well, it's a little bit redundant because you have to be a resident of the city to live in that ward. So, if you're going to put language in saying you have to be a resident of Waterville, that's obvious because you have to be a resident of Waterville to live in any of the wards. Unfortunately, I'm not necessarily agreeing with Ron on this one. I think that on the whole, you have a reasonable knowledge. You should have a reasonable knowledge of city politics on the whole. And yeah, and the way that the elections work with the council is it's staggered. So if you moved out of, I'm going to use my ward, if I moved out of Ward 5 and went to, let's say, Ward 3 or any other ward, then there would be an election coming up closer than the one that would have been in my ward. So having moved, it wouldn't preclude you from seeking office if you wanted to. And ultimately, it's up to the voters. If you just move in Johnny come lately and you don't have a relationship with the people on those streets and know the unique concerns of each ward, they do have the option not to vote you in. I know a lot of people in Ward 5. Other wards, it would be a lot more difficult. So I think that takes care of itself. And the mayor represents the entire city, so I can see why it's more important to have that position to have been here a year. But for 1/7, I can see jumping around wards. I think 3 months is enough. Thank you.
Kathy.
No, I hate to say it, but I disagree with what Julian just said.
It's a strange evening, isn't it?
I think it is important to have lived here full time for a year. Hillary's statement, I kind of agree with that. She's been a Waterville resident for many years. So I'm waxing and waning about, should it just be a Waterville resident, a full-time Waterville resident for a year before you even decide to run for election? I just have an issue. You've lived in a ward for 3 months. You've never lived in Waterville before. And unless they do a Sunday night flyer on you, Julian, they probably wouldn't vote for the new person coming in, but
Yeah.
All right.
They did
So-
do a flyer on me. It was a pool flyer. I got a different one to you. Thank you.
So for clarification, Ron, your motion is that a city councilor must live in their ward for 1 year before they could be elected, before they can run for election.
Yes, reading section 2 qualifications, the only thing that I would change is it says, for 3 months previous to the election, have been a resident of the respective ward for which they are elected. So it's basically the same thing. The only thing is change 3 months to 1 year. The same thing as we did with the mayor.
And Rod, if I can propose something, an amendment, right? That we add that the counselor, the candidate, right, for council should be a Waterville resident for a year and live in there, that they can be a ward resident for 3 months, but they have to be a Waterville resident for at least a year. So that will make it consistent with the mayor position and also keep the 3 months requirement for the ward.
That's a separate motion.
So we can vote on this. and vote.
It's an amendment to the motion that he made.
Right. But what I'm saying is Ron's motion, we have to up or down vote Ron's. And then if you want to make your second motion, you can make your second motion and we can vote it. But since yours isn't an amendment, yours changes the entire motion.
Okay, so let's just vote and then have Phil propose his later when he wants to. I think.
All right. So we're going, let's see here. We went up. So now we're going down, or do we go down and we go up? We'll just start. Phil, we'll start with you. How do you vote?
No.
Ludi,
No.
Sam,
No.
Rian,
No.
Hillary,
No.
James,
No.
me, no. No, well, Ron, sorry, first. Sorry.
Yes.
I'm a no. Julian,
I'm a no.
Kathy.
yes.
Okay. Any other motions on Article 4, City Council?
I'd like to make a motion to add a residency, a 1 year residency, a 1 year city residency for a candidate who is seeking a city council position, seeking a city council position, and keeping the 3 month ward residency as is.
I'll second that motion.
All right, discussion from the bottom up. Kathy.
Phil, could you say that one more time?
So what we're doing, we're basically adding that the candidate for city council should be a resident of the city of Waterville for at least 1 year and reside in the ward for at least 3 months before they can seek a city council position.
For that first, just a question, Phil, for that first part of the sentence, is that a permanent, full-time resident that I'm not here for 7 months and then I leave?
Well, it's pretty much the same as we had for the mayor, right? So you have to live in the city for at least a year, right? A year full-time before you can.
So you're saying a continuous year, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. No, I agree, Tom.
All right. So Kathy, is that all of your thoughts on that?
Yes, that I agree with Phil.
Okay, Julian.
I agree with Phil. It would give continuity to the mayor's position. It wouldn't tie up people being able to move between wards. And I do think it's a good idea to be here a year. I think I get what Kathy's going at with the residency requirements, but that's separate, governed under state law. Unfortunately, it's quite lax, and the definition of resident enforcement is another issue, I think, separate to the question, but I can understand her concerns. So I think Phil's motion is a very good motion. Thank you.
For all the reasons I stated before, I agree. Ron,
Yes, I must agree with Phil. I think it's even better than mine. I fully agree.
James,
Not in favor.
Hillary,
Yeah, I'm not.
Rian,
I have nothing to add.
Samantha,
I have nothing to add.
Ludi,
No comment.
Phil. I think you support your own motion.
Yeah, nothing additional.
Okay. Then we'll vote the same way that we commented. Kathy,
Yes.
Julian,
Yes.
I am also a yes. Ron,
Yes.
James,
No.
Hillary,
No.
Rian,
No.
Ludi,
Skip Sam.
Sam,
No.
Ludi,
No.
Phil.
Yes.
All right, it's 5-5. Motion does not pass. Any other motions on Article 4 as it pertains to the City Council?
I
Yeah,
have two motions under, I have two motions under section 4.
Yeah.
And it's after, it's, if you're on the paper copy, they're both on page 10. So it's after the whole list of vacancies and all of that stuff. So my first motion pertains to when a vacancy may be declared by the council. And it says in here that it can be declared by 2/3 vote if a city councilor is absent on 3 consecutive occasions. I would like to amend that to say 3 consecutive regular meetings.
I'll second.
Okay, and then I just want to just very briefly speak to this. I talked to a former commissioner, and their intent was for it to be regular meetings. You know, and I'd also heard from several current counselors about the situation with Flavia, and that they had believed that the intent was, you know, they'd believed that it was regular meetings and not if there are, you know, special meetings called, you could call 3 special meetings within a 1-week period and remove a counselor you don't like. And so just based on what it seems like the current council and what the former commission has understood the intent of this to be regular meetings, I would just like to amend it to regular meetings.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All right, discussion from the top down. Phil.
Well, I think that the language, I don't think it's necessary, because I don't think that a counselor can be removed if they have you know, extenuating circumstances for them not attending the meeting, right? Because I
There's
think,
no language prohibiting it.
yeah, but they still have to go through a vote, and I don't think that vote is something that would possibly pass, because a counselor, for like the example that was brought in, the counselor, it's stuck somewhere because of a pandemic, and they get voted down. I don't think any counselor would, in good conscience, or any constituent would support such a thing. I know, because again, I really don't think it's necessary, because it would really have to be something, something really, really dramatic, or that would be a drastic move for a city council to oust another councilor when they are stuck somewhere else because of something that they have no control over. I think that we would be able to, that would create so much outrage in the community that I don't foresee something like that will possibly be ever an issue. So I just don't think this would be necessary.
Tom, could I chime in for one moment, please? This is Patty.
Yeah, go ahead, Patty.
I would just point out that the language in the charter says that it's somewhat subjective, so a vacancy may also be declared if there's consecutive absences. So it still allows for some, subjectivity on the part of the council. So I would just make note of that.
Thank
But
you, Patty.
again, the subjectivity is something that is pretty much everywhere on the charter. Like we had the discussion as far as diversity on the council or on the board and commissions. We hope that mayor would pick such board and commission. But it doesn't say on it. It didn't say. We wanted it to say right that in the city charter, but it doesn't. Right. I really don't see this being something that, I think it's possible. I just think that this particular scenario is not something that would that any counselor would happily take on to try to out somebody for circumstances that are completely beyond their control.
Tom, are you going down the line for debate on this? How's this going?
Yes, that's what we're doing. So next is Looney.
So I think it makes sense. I get what Phil's saying, but I don't think it hurts to add the language of it saying 3 consecutive regular meetings. So I'm in favor of it.
Sam.
So if I've learned anything over the past month or two, it's to expect the unexpected. And I think that we could have run into a potential issue, and I completely support this amendment. I don't think that it hurts to add this in at all. It's just adding a little bit of clarification, and it makes perfect sense to me, so I support it.
Rian, do you need to add any more?
I have nothing to add. I think I've made my point pretty clearly. I will state that Flavia did attend a meeting remotely from Cabo Verde, and it was like 2 a.m, and she did it just so that she wouldn't have missed 3 consecutive occasions, even though 2 of those occasions were special meetings.
Okay, Hillary.
So I would say that alone proves the point that it's necessary. Phil, you make a valid point. We don't want to think the worst of people. We would hope that no one would take advantage of it. What we're saying is that there was a city councilor who felt that she needed to make this happen, and they were special meetings. So, and I'm speaking to you, Phil. I want to persuade you because you made the comment about the diversity language, but you were the one that actually made that motion. So when something's not in there, sometimes you have to put it in there to make sure that something changes or that something could happen, or in this case, prevent something from happening. There's no suggestion whatsoever that anyone had any ill intent. I think the point is that adding on 3, what was the wording, Rian? It was 3 regular meetings, just clarifies it. And actually in Flavia's case, I mean, she was stuck for quite a while. So I actually would be in favor of more than 3, but 3 is fine.
James.
I would definitely be in favor of this motion. Rihanna's right that the language as it's written would permit exactly what he gave as an example could happen. I think it's not some, maybe back in December, it might have been a far off notion that it would ever come up. But in the meantime, it has come up, this particular issue. And so I think it does need to be specified, because without it, there's certainly nothing that's.
Ron.
Yes, is it my understanding that what Rian wants to do is change the vagueness in occasions and change it to meetings?
Yes, that is all I want to do.
I would agree with that. I like it specific better than vagueness.
Yeah, I agree. Julian?
Yeah, and just to Phil's point, Phil, it's actually giving more protection because what Rian's doing is extending it. Technically, it's 6 weeks with 3 consecutive scheduled meetings would be. And I think back to 4 or 5 years ago on the school board when they had emergency sessions with the principal, they were having meetings daily. You could be on vacation for a week and already max out. And I'm a little leery to really bind people. And I had this discussion with Eric on this, Haley. It was an interesting discussion. Once you start putting language in why you can vote people off, you could have a whole nother charter. And that's up to interpretation again. Now, if anyone was to recall Flavio because she was stranded in another country, the political ramifications and fallout would be horrendous. So there is public pressure that people really aren't going to be douchebags about this. The same way if I had cancer and had to have chemo and had to miss 3 school board meetings in a row, I am sure my board would not take advantage of that. They are still under the political eye. And ultimately, when real crises happen, you know, decency comes out. So I can see why this needs to be amended. Thank you.
And Kathy?
Well, I disagree with what Rian said about a regular meeting because you're having budget meetings right now. So you're representing your ward and speaking about budgets. I think every council meeting is vital. But I can see why this was proposed, I guess. But what Patty brought up, a vacancy may also be declared. I guess I don't have a strong feeling, but it is important for all of these people at this table today to realize every city council meeting is vital when you're representing residents of the city.
Kathy, thank you for that. All right, we're going to vote top down. Phil, go.
I don't know.
Moody.
Yes.
Samantha.
Yes.
Rian.
Yes.
Hillary.
Yes.
James.
Yes.
Ron.
Yes.
I am a yes. Julian.
Yes.
And Kathy.
Yes.
Okay, it's a 9-1. Any other motions as it pertains to
Yes.
the city
Wait,
council?
I had my second one. I had my
Oh.
second one under vacancies. So it's actually, so that little section we just did, this would affect, all of the paragraphs after that under section 4. I would like to eliminate the council appointment of a vacancy. And I would instead like to have an election called within 120 days of the declaration of the vacancy.
Is there a second?
I would second it, but I would like to make an amendment to it. And I'm not sure how to go about this. Maybe Rian could help me on this. I agree with Rian's sentiment, but I'd hate to wait as long as 120 days.
I think
Because-
legally we have to do 90 to allow for absentee balloting. And then because we have partisan elections, we have to leave time for caucusing, which is why it's 120.
Okay, I second that motion.
All right, discussion. We're going to start with Kathy and work our way up.
I agree with what Rian said. So no other comment.
Hello?
Julian, can you hear me? Sorry.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not going to elaborate. I can see so many reasons why this is important than 6 people choosing for the whole ward who don't even represent or really understand that ward and have got their own political agendas. So I agree with Rian on this.
As do I. Ron?
I do agree with Rian on this point.
James?
I agree.
Hillary?
I love it when we all agree. I agree.
Rian, I presume you agree with yourself?
Yeah, can I just say I'm shocked. I was expecting us to have like an hour-long discussion on this.
No, it's twice tonight we've had a 10-way, I think.
Well, I would like to point out while you're saying that, because I think we're on our way to a unanimous verdict on this particular issue, we have covered a record number of motions tonight.
Yeah, and Tom, before we leave, can I make one motion that ties into something earlier that is?
We didn't
You
let
can,
everyone
but
talk though.
Let's finish this vote. Let's finish this vote off. All right. So I think we're at Sam now.
Can
I
I
agree
ask
with
a vote of,
Ian.
can I ask a point of clarification before you vote, please?
Yes, yes, yes.
I'm wondering how long, I'm not clear on how long the vacancy has to be before the election would be called. Like if the vacancy is within, 4 months of the election, then it doesn't have to be called. I just want to be clear on what exactly is being proposed.
That's a good point, and I've thought of that myself. It seems like if it was before the first 6 months of the year, you would call the election, but maybe after the second 6 months you wouldn't, because by the time that 90 days have gone by, et cetera, you would be hitting that election point. So I had thought of Rian's question earlier, but I wonder after the 6 month rolls over towards the other side, maybe at that point the language said the seat remains vacant because the budget season's probably already finished at that point. Or if it doesn't remain vacant, then it's council appointed at that point. But you could really run into a lot of money and hassle turning around and having an election, waiting 90 days, and now you've only got 2 months before the darn election coming up.
That's my point. I just want to make sure that everyone understands that, you might be filling a seat that's going to expire at the end of the year. So it could be an election for, a 3 or 4 month period.
A month period,
Of course,
October.
there's a cost associated with it. Elections aren't cheap to run. So, you're looking at a, $4,000 or $5,000 special election, which may be backing up to another election that's going to take place 2 or 3 months later. So I just, I'm just concerned that, this is a kind of a shoot from the hip with not a lot of discussion when all the ramifications aren't being considered.
I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Patty, but I believe with the previous vacancies, they had done if that vacancy was within 120 days of the regular election, they just left it vacant.
But they didn't have to leave it vacant. They could have appointed someone.
Right, but what I'm saying is it seems like the city council has had that policy of if it's vacant within 120 days beforehand, they just leave it vacant.
I don't think that it's written. I think that maybe has been a philosophy, but I don't see that it's in the charter.
Right, I'd just be willing to add that amendment to my motion. That if the vacancy is within 120 days of the regular election.
But what if it's 4 months before? Now you're going to go through all that work for a month. I don't know.
I could be having an election in October and we're having an election in November. That's what I'm trying to avoid. Like, I can't imagine trying to run a special election this year when we're having one in July now, and then we're having the presidential in November and trying to squeeze in a special election in September or October. It would just be very difficult to administer. So that's my concern. It's like backing up an election to another election when you're taking absentee requests for 2 elections at one time is very difficult.
I think Rian's got a good point. I'm wondering if Rian would consider making it a 6 month cutoff. Anything.
I was actually just thinking that I was thinking the June election or the November election.
Right, but I think that isn't how it would fall necessarily. You know, when you put strict timelines in, it runs its course and it's going to fall where it falls. And it's also, you know, based on availability of polling locations and that sort of thing. So, I mean, it would make more sense to me if we could plan to piggyback onto a June election so that we have the ability, if we're going to have a special election, to piggyback on June or wait till November, you know, like one or the other, so that you're not calling, you know, elections every 2 months or whatever.
Well,
I don't know. I just throw it out. I mean, obviously I'm going to run whatever elections are required, but I just want it to be a thoughtful process. So we're all considering that, you know, we could be having an election this year, for example, we're already having 3 elections. To add 1 or 2 more, it makes it costly and difficult. And certainly under these circumstances, it's almost impossible. So,
Okay, so it sounds like we're all at least very close to in agreement that we want this. I will withdraw my motion and then I will work with Patty and get something that, you know, is at least a little more tenable in terms of when the elections are held.
So while you're withdrawing,
I think that makes a lot of sense. I think there is a consensus here that this is a good idea. We support it. It's just a matter of the logistics. And I'm confident we can figure that out. Julian, you have your hand raised.
yeah, and while you're withdrawing it, you know, the consideration you're saying that a council hasn't appointed someone within the 120 days, there might be a time that it's very important to do so. Your city manager might die or leave, and you might, and they're voting on a new city manager. So at that point, hopefully the council would appoint someone before the 120 days expire, so that you have 7 heads choosing a city manager as opposed to 6. So I'm not sure if language needs to be in there regards that as well, because we don't want to preclude them from appointing people within that.
Well, I'll loop you in the conversation with Patty.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So can I make a motion, Tom?
Yes. Yep. I mean, is it something we can do in 7 minutes?
Yes, it is. It's quick because
Good
this,
man.
this has been flogged out before. But I think I would like to make the motion that definitely a city councillor cannot take a job within a city department for 2 years. I won't elaborate much because I've already touched that with the city manager, but it's even more important for city councillors because city councillors work and negotiate the union contracts for the city departments. So you would be negotiating with a union for a department, knowing you might be leaving, and then take a job within that department. There's quite a few cities that have precluded that for up to 2 years. And also, you know, a city manager could offer a councillor a job to get him off the council, I'm sure, in a lot of cities with a swing vote that's troublesome. So I would like to, I think it's even more important than this, more applicable to a councillor than it was to a city manager, my first motion. So I'll make a motion that a city manager, a city councillor cannot take a job within a city department for up to 2 years after vacating that seat. Thank you.
I'll second the motion. Phil, discussion.
Nothing to add.
Phil,
Can you hear me?
there you go.
Nothing,
Yes, we can now.
nothing to add.
Okay. Looney,
No comment.
Samantha,
No comment.
Rian,
No comment.
Hillary.
I wish someone would comment a bit more. Only because I feel like I could use a little bit more guidance. So I think I understood it with the city manager. I guess I'm not understanding it with the city councilors. So I'm not sure what to add, and I'm not sure how to vote on this just yet. It seems to me we sometimes have a really hard time getting city councilors, and I'm trying to think of a time in recent past. Are you saying, so like when Nick Champagne left and became our city engineer, he wouldn't have been able to do that?
Correct. And exactly.
And yet that job may not have been open at the time when he would have liked to have applied for it. like
Right.
those kind of jobs, we never know when they're going to be open. And so you almost have to wait for someone to move on or to retire. And he had that expertise, and we were lucky that he did. I understand it's not ideal, but I'm thinking the better of if that person on the city council happens to have expertise and they actually have a chance to get a job that's a paid job versus a city councilor that isn't, but the city manager is. I think I'm
Well,
okay with it.
Yeah, just to answer your question, I mean, Champagne's a good friend of mine, so and I understand that, and obviously it was a good fit for him. But you have to remember that very same counselor would have negotiated or could have negotiated the benefits, pay, and salary for the engineer.
But they would have
prior.
had to have recused themselves if they were applying for the job, or if they were being considered, they would have had to
Well,
have recused themselves.
Sure, but I'm not using his case. I want to remove him from the equation, but I'm saying, let's say someone had their eye on a seat and then negotiates how many staff to lay off in that department. What's the pay raise
Yeah.
we're going to get? And, with the mayor
Yeah.
veto, it's not inconceivable either that if one of those councillors is the swing vote for the entire budget or to support a mayor's veto, that an unscrupulous city manager, if faced with two equally qualified candidates, throws it to the councillor that he would like to have off that seat. And
I just feel like, okay, I get your point. I'm just saying,
human
I
nature is
feel like,
what it is, and I have seen this language in many, many other
Yep.
cities.
I understand, and thank you for the clarification. So I think I would say I don't support it. I think the city councilors are paid very little for their work, and it's certainly not equivalent to a full-time job like the city manager is. If they're actually being considered or they've applied, they'd have to recuse themselves for a vote. If they're voting thinking that they could get the job, but they'd still have to apply, there's no way they could ever know if they'd get the job. So I'd like to think better of them than that.
Yeah. Actually, last point of clarification.
Hold on, Julian, we gotta move along on the discussion.
Okay.
It will come to you in a moment. James.
I wouldn't be in favor. No other comments.
Ron.
Yes, I will say the same thing that James did. I am in favor and no comments on this.
So I'm in favor of it, and I'm in favor of it for the reason that Hillary just said, but as it pertained to Rian's motion earlier about missing multiple meetings, and that is that, I would like to think better of humanity, but unfortunately, as we discussed earlier with that situation, it's not necessarily something that we can trust. We can't necessarily trust that people are going to make great decisions, that they're going to act as ethically as we'd like to have them do all the time. So in certain situations, we've got to put language in to prevent these types of abuses. That's why we have language in there about how the mayor can be recalled. So, from my perspective, I would be in favor of this. Julian.
Yeah, I'll be very quick. I'll belabor this, but to address Hillary's point, there already is these kind of things that do preclude councillors, because if you're a city councillor, you already cannot work for a city department. So there already is that kind of overlap. You can't sit on the council and be a fireman or work for the police department. So there is some of that already going on. I think there's good reason for it, and I think the cities that were onto that obviously must have seen some problems in the past or some reason for doing it.
So your motion is for how many years
Tom,
then?
2 years, but yeah.
Yeah, someone wanted me?
Tom, this is James. If I can jump in real quick. I probably mumbled. I said I was not in favor. I think Ron misheard me. I just wanted to make sure.
I heard you. I did hear that you were not in favor.
Okay.
But thank you for the clarification. Kathy.
Yes, I'm in favor of this.
All right, so let's vote on it. Starting with you, Phil.
Yes.
Okay, and Ludi.
No.
Samantha.
No.
Rian.
No.
Yeah, Hillary.
No.
James.
No.
Ron.
No,
I'm a yes. Julian.
I'm a yes.
Kathy.
Yes.
All right, so it's 4 yeses, 6 noes. The motion does not pass. I'm gonna make a motion to adjourn. It's 8:01.
Tom, Tom,
Yes,
can I just make one brief statement?
Ron, of course you can.
Okay, now, can we, next time before we come, I would assume we're going to be picking up the rest of Article 4, then Article 5. So we'll have some semblance of what we're going to be taking up, like Phil being a former member of the city council. When he looked at his agenda, he had some idea of what he was going to be taking up. We don't know from week to week when we meet what we're going to be taking up and what we're not going to be taking up. So would it be possible, and maybe James can answer this question too, if we see something in, say, section 4 and section 5, can we, not section 4, section 5, article 4, article 5, can we just email the group and then it'll give us a chance to do some research, and then it would be more, I'd be more comfortable commenting on these if I knew what we were going to talk about, not when I get here at 6 o'clock.
Ron, absolutely. I would not only encourage you to submit any motions or thoughts or ideas that you have for motions ahead of the meeting, but I would encourage everyone else that wants to do that as well.
I just want to say that if we're doing this via email, we can only share information. We cannot actually have a discussion on the merits of a motion via email. It violates the open access laws. So
Yes, and I do appreciate you pointing that out, because the last thing that any of us want to do is run afoul of that. And I know you've been helpful to
Does
to
it violate
probably
the
more than one
laws
of us on that issue.
if there's not 3 people, if it's not more than 3 people?
I think for the purpose of adhering to the Freedom of Information standards, I would recommend that if you have suggested motions, that you send those to be included on the agenda, and then people have a heads up of what will be discussed, and then the actual debate and discussion can be taken up at the meeting. But I think it might be helpful to have some motions in advance so that people can do a little preparation on their own, so that the topic doesn't come up for the first time at the meeting.
Yeah.
Patty, I think that's a great idea. Before we vote on the motion to adjourn, I think there was a second, Julian, I think you seconded it. I would like to say this. I know that we kind of did things a little bit differently than we typically have tonight. I'm sure you guys noticed that we only had one round of discussion. At the same time, I don't think that anybody didn't have the opportunity to speak. I think everybody felt heard. And I'm very confident that we covered as much ground tonight as we have in any meeting. And I look forward to hopefully, picking up where we left off tonight. So on the motion to adjourn that was seconded by Julian, we'll start from the bottom up. Kathy, how do you vote?
Yes.
Julian?
Yes.
Me, yes. Ron?
Yes, and good night.
Yes, and you too, Ron. James?
Yes, and thank you, Tom.
Thank you. Hillary?
Yes, thank you, Tom.
Thank you, guys. Arian?
yep.
And we're at Sam?
Yes.
Moody?
Yes.
Phil?
Yes.
All right, great job, everybody. Good night.
Now we're gonna go.